Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show and Tuesday Schlegs, as we always know, or for our guy Bill Bender. Usually he joins us at 12:40. He's got some big interviews, some feature pieces he's going to be working on this week for Michigan and USC. So we're going to have him here and on right now before he has some of those interviews. So I'd like to welcome in our guy Bill Bender, the sporting news, one of the best you're going to find. And Bill, actually, I saw this today. I think was it maybe 1949. I do my today in history. Yeah, 1949, the Sporting News voted Jackie Robinson Rookie of the Year. Beam wanted to ask what your thoughts were on that vote and what if you were a part of that or not.
No, I was not there in 49, but as you know, at Sporting News, we've been around since 1886. So for me, being part of that tradition and the college football tradition that we have there in particular, we're one of the 5 that does All-Americans and consensus All-Americans. So that's a big deal for us. And man, I can't believe guys we're already into week 4. This is wild how fast the season moves when you get into it.
It always
go ahead, Bob.
It always goes really quick. You know, you start off, and I always tell the guys, like, before you know it, you're going to be staring down Halloween and Thanksgiving, and the season is basically over. So you got to enjoy that as we'll have the elongated playoff this year, so it'll feel a little different. A lot of big games that happened this week, a lot of tight games, maybe games that we didn't think were going to be good that ended up being great. Kind of what were your just initial 30,000-foot thoughts from the weekend?
Well, Kentucky got our attention because it came down to the last minute. And Kentucky, obviously, I'm going for it there. I don't know about you guys. On 4th and 8. If I've got a chance to beat the number 1 team in the country, I'm going to take it and take it in that spot. I'm curious, and I've got to do some more statistical work on it. What do these quarterbacks look like when they don't have a running game? We can say all the nice things about Carson Beck we want. The running game wasn't working, and all of a sudden Georgia's offense is pretty ordinary. As you get into the SEC big money games, how's that going to be for Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Nico Iamaleava? In the Big Ten, same deal with Dylan Gabriel, Miller Moss, Will Howard. What happens if another team loads up and shuts your running game down? That's going to be something to watch as we get into the playoff chase.
Yeah, we're going to see it this week. USC going to the Big House, and they named Orji as the starting quarterback, who I think has maybe thrown 6 passes the entire season. So what happens when you get behind the sticks in the Big House this week versus USC, and you got to rely on that throwing arm? You were definitely 100% going to see it. What are some games or things that have been out there that have really surprised you, whether it's fundamentals of the game, penalties in the game, just looking over the college landscape, some things that you thought would be eliminated over the first, 2 weeks that we've seen raise up here in week 3?
Well, Michigan has botched that quarterback situation, and I know hindsight is 20/20. I understand that. But when they went with Davis Warren to start, maybe he looked better in camp. But with what they're trying to do offensively, Alex Orji's probably the better option. You saw that Saturday when he came in the game. They immediately run down the field in 9 plays. Good mix with Khalil Mullings in the running game. But to your point, Schlegs, somebody's going to load up and stop the run. Can he throw the ball down the field? And he's going to have to be able to do that this week against USC, who absolutely can throw the ball down the field with Miller Moss, their receivers. A good spectacle game for the Trojans to come into the Big House and open Big Ten play. And one of the games this weekend, there are a couple like this, and you guys know this as former players. There are 3 or 4 road favorites by a touchdown. And they're one of them. And I know Tennessee's another one. Yep. And those are the games that get my attention. When South Carolina was a road underdog, and you saw how they played against LSU, or a home underdog, you saw how they played against LSU last week.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Another one of the ones last week was Oregon State. And we didn't really know, Bill, what Oregon was. We thought they were great. 2 struggling appearances where they really couldn't get the running game going the way that they wanted. And, they couldn't convert. They weren't really moving the ball, finishing in the red zone. They just had a number of issues. Finally, what it looked like putting a whole game together against Oregon State and what we knew would be a very bitterly fought contest by the Beavers. Are we back now to thinking Oregon is what we thought they were before the preseason, or is there still some more issues to be ironed out?
No, I think when Dylan Gabriel gets involved in the running game, that's when you see the best. He had 64 yards rushing touchdown. and all of a sudden they're running the football, and then all of a sudden they look like the Oregon we pictured in the preseason. So if I was doing a Big Ten power ranking today, I would have Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, USC 3, with a chance to move up. A really big opportunity this weekend to show that they are maybe the second best team in the Big Ten. And then Penn State 4, coming off a bye week, playing Kent State. My wife went to Kent State. She wore her Kent State shirt Saturday. It was brutal watching USC put up 71 on them. I don't know who made the Golden Flashes schedule, but they might be in a little bit of trouble on Saturday.
So, well, yeah, another big matchup too. Big Ten. You have Illinois, Nebraska. Illinois going to Nebraska. Talk a little bit about that one, because Illinois obviously doing things that we didn't expect. Dylan Raiola is actually playing very, very well. They're playing a physical brand of football in Nebraska. That's a huge game, especially as we look at, Nebraska coming to Ohio Stadium later in the year. Talk a little bit about that one.
Well, if Nebraska gets by this one, there is a very good chance they're unbeaten when they come to Ohio Stadium, which would make that game super exciting. Probably the biggest game between Ohio State and Nebraska since the Huskers have joined the Big Ten. So I'm kind of hoping that stage happens. Would give us a lot to write about Dylan Raiola coming into the Horseshoe. Illinois beat Kansas because they forced 4 turnovers. And that is going to be the key. What do we always talk about when Nebraska loses football games? They turn the ball over. They can't close out a 1-score game. I think it's interesting they're playing on Friday night. I know you guys are big high school guys like me. They moved all the games in Lincoln to Thursday night. So there's 4 or 5 high school games in Lincoln that have to be played on Thursday because, as we know, that's one of those towns, much like Columbus, when the Huskers are on, nothing else is going on. So very excited to see that stage. I think Nebraska wins the game as long as they protect the football.
I've been really good, and Matt Rule's got those guys humming. And are they the 5th best team in the Big Ten to you, Bill?
I think so. As of now, yes. And sorting out that middle class can be interesting. I know Michigan State's still undefeated, but hasn't really been tested, will be tested by Boston College. If Michigan were to beat USC, we would throw them right back in the mix with the understanding that they basically look like Iowa right now. They have a good defense. They have a pedestrian offense. Might be insulting Iowa a little bit because they're coming off their bye week and trying to be in that middle of the Big Ten with their schedule. But, yeah, Nebraska would be that 5th team right now.
You're going to be talking about Michigan and this week because that's a big-time game. One thing that's really shocked me in the Big Ten is the fact that Iowa and Michigan defensively, 2 of the best in the country last year, are giving up points to – Michigan gave up 18 to Arkansas State, right? Iowa giving up points. Like, what's going on with those stellar defenses?
Well, I think in Michigan's case, it's coordinator change. Wink Martindale is a little bit different. I think Wink Martindale is almost coaching them like an NFL team, where there are differences in the college game. And obviously, Wink has spent a ton of time in the NFL. Iowa, I'm not too worried about their defense. I think once they get into Big Ten play, the expectation would be 17 points or less most of the time. They're still going to be very good at stopping the run. Their secondary is decent. They've had a couple coverage breakdowns, though. So that's probably what's going on there. If you look at the absolute best defenses in the country right now, it's Georgia still. They still haven't given up a touchdown. Ohio State still hasn't given up a touchdown. The surprise defense on there, and they haven't really played anybody, I understand that. Ole Miss still hasn't given up a touchdown, and they're putting up tons of points in Oxford.
One other team that bounced back in a big way, Bill, and it's early in the season. You mentioned it's week 4, and so we overreact to wins, we overreact to losses. Notre Dame snapped back in a big way over Purdue, and they really didn't push the ball down the field like we were kind of hoping. They lost some players in the process, but they looked really good, scoring 66 points and dominating that thing. It's 42-0 at halftime. Can they win with Riley Leonard doing what they're doing, like to the level they want to?
Well, as you saw, there's calls for Steve Angeli to be the quarterback because he's pushing the ball down the field a little bit. Riley Leonard doesn't have a touchdown pass yet. They had about everybody in the running game had a touchdown this weekend. It was a complete effort on that side. The defense has been still very good. Their defense is going to keep them in every game, but they're going to have to, one, establish a better passing tack around Riley Leonard, or those calls for Angeli are going to continue to grow. And 2, they have to win the beauty pageant every week. Like, they can't go out against the Miami Redhawks this weekend and win by 13 points. They have to do what they did against Purdue every week. And even they play Louisville next week. Yeah. That will be the next one. Somebody on my Twitter feed this morning said Louisville hasn't played anybody. Well, Louisville's going to play the Irish next week. They play Georgia Tech this week, and Jeff Brom has a really good football team right now.
Hey, a surprise for me is Indiana. And you got Indiana, like I think it's the second to end, right before Michigan. And you look at their schedule, like they just absolutely beat the dog crap out of UCLA. And again, UCLA is not that good, but they beat them. They were on the road in the Coliseum. I think it was like 42-13 or something like that. You got Indiana, they play Maryland, Northwestern. They got Nebraska. Washington's really not there. You have the Spartans, then you got Michigan, then you got Ohio State. Like, is there a real chance that IU's on the up and up?
Yeah, and Rourke is dealing at quarterback. Yeah. I know all about him and his brother. The Ohio Bobcats, Air Canada pipeline of quarterbacks. Those guys can play. And 𝗟𝗩𝗘 came into Big Ten Media Day, made a couple headlines because his press conference was very brash, considering it was Indiana. But you look at his track record at James Madison, that's a coach that's not used to losing much. And when you're at Indiana, it can't be an act. You know, Tom Allen, it was good for a year or two, but then some realities set in. But I think with 𝗟𝗩𝗘, they may have something. And you just said it, Schlegs, the schedule is so important. And when you catch breaks in the schedules like that, in the way they're playing offense and in the way Michigan's playing offense, no game can be taken for granted. Indiana will go in there with a lot of confidence, I'm sure.
All right, Bill, we got to let you go here. Before you get out of here in the last 30 seconds, Florida State, Mike Norvell, should he be worried about his job, or is this just a one season lost and they're kind of pushing the chips in and they'll probably get ready for next year?
I think next year. It's the side effect of picking the wrong quarterback in the transfer portal. I will say this, though, just given how the season's going, if they lose to a very solid Cal team and drop to 0-4, and knowing how the administrations at places like Florida and Florida State work, it could get a little weird. But I think they just need to win a football game and start and go from there.
Absolutely. I said if they would have beat Georgia Tech, I think they'd probably be 3-0 right now, and that's the margins in college football. Bill, we appreciate the time. I know you got some big stuff to get done today, interviewing USC quarterbacks, preparing some features for this week's preparation against Michigan. Check those out on Sporting News, folks. Bill does such a great job. Thanks for the time today, sir.
Hey, I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much as always.
Bill Bender, give him a follow on X at BillBender92. One of the best to do it. One of our favorites here. And working essentially, he's going to sit down with Miller Moss today, putting together a feature for USC later this week as they take on Michigan. Before we get out of here, attention, parents, athletes. You want to protect what matters most with X Sport mouthguards, trusted by professional athletes and designed by NHL team dentists. X Sport mouthguards are scientifically tested to absorb high impact, protecting both your teeth and Schleg's big meat brain right there. X Sport mouthguards feature three layers of protection, including patented carbon fiber, custom fit to your grill with 3D printed technology. That means more protection, better performance, more maximum comfort. And here's the best part, folks. Clear communication. You can talk with these things in. Your kids will absolutely love them. So you can focus on the game, not on the gear. Don't take your chances with your safety. Visit xsportguards.com/Bobby, folks. I know it's the middle football season right now. You got hockey, basketball. You can wear these things for anything. Save 15% on your X Sport. Protect what matters most. A lot of big stories in college football here, Schleg's, coming up. A lot of things changing. I know we've got some big games. We're going to do this. There's some issues that are going on here in NIL. Tennessee is doing something that I never thought that I would see done. We're going to talk about what the Volunteers are up to next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
That's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel just All right, welcome in here to the Bobby Carpenter Show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Bill Bender was great. Give him a follow on X, like I said, at Bill Bender 92. If you're watching, please throw in some comments, some questions, anything you want to know. Like, subscribe, please share it. Let other folks know. We love getting the good word out. All right, so let's talk about Tennessee right here. And the Volunteers in the NIL space, everybody's trying to get creative. They're trying to figure out different ways to generate revenue for NIL. A lot of this is going to be coming in-house soon. And they talked about the different revenue sharing. And so they're able to get 20% of these TV deals, going to be roughly like $20 million or so with the Big Ten and SEC schools. But the problem is you got to find that $20 million. And that $20 million, Schlegs, is already being spent. Like you always say, stack them vertical, count them sideways. So those $20 million, it's not like they're just sitting around every year just in Scrooge McDuck's vault. It's being spent on other things, coaches, other sports, food. You're swimming through all those dollars. So Tennessee is going to be adding a 10% player talent fee on their tickets. I believe this is going to be starting next year. I didn't think I'd see this, but after seeing this now, I think this might just be the tip of the iceberg, and it wouldn't surprise me if this starts happening other places.
And we're talking about naming rights. Remember that a couple weeks ago? We talked about naming rights. And here's the real is like,
so the question is like, would you rather pay 10% more to go to a game, or would you rather see your stadium named something? Or maybe they don't name the stadium, but they name the field.
Yeah. I mean, those are all things that you have to evaluate. Plus, on top of tickets, right, you have the ticket service fees that just add more and more, so that $100 ticket now is $110, and then the service fees are based off of the $110. So now those tickets are now $157, right? Because the fees that are on tickets are astronomical, right? So here's the thing. We talked about this before, Bob. At some point, you can't just shake the can, right? And we were talking about Ohio State coming in with the new experience in the restaurant and being able to have
the 1922 club.
Was that?
The 1922 club.
1922 club, right? So other things like that you can be able to do. You're gonna have to start being creative. Whether that's, I mean, there was a thing a long time ago, a guy that was in my MBA class, we were talking about doing like a combine for just regular people and having an autograph signing with the players and them being able to get this is way before NIL. This was back in like 2014, Bob, when we were in our MBA program. Yeah. But just that's a great concept. You're going to have to start finding ways that you're going to have to generate outside income for this. You can't rely upon the fan base. Now, with that being said, the fan base, and rightly so, should be very critical about how their teams perform if you're going to be adding on an additional 10% talent fee. And you spoke about it in the last segment with Bill when we were talking about Florida State missing. You can't miss.
No.
Right? So, and that's one thing, again, Mark Pantoni, Ohio State, Ryan Day, like they didn't miss. A lot of their dudes they got were developed here at the Ohio State University, and they selectively went out and found the guys that were the right cultural fit, but also with the right talent. They were non-misses. So you're going to have to evaluate whoever you bring in. Are they creative enough? And that's also, this goes back to the head coach has to be the CEO. I'm telling you right now, you're going to find it more. We saw it in the Atlanta game where head coaches in the NFL can still be a coordinator. It's a little bit different. In college football, you're being pulled so many different directions, whether it's through different events that you got to do to go out there and raise money to be able to pay for a roster. That's fine in my opinion, but you got to be creative. These athletic departments have to be creative, and they got to be held accountable to how they then spend that money. And that's all about it. Like, is it in facilities? Is it for talent? right? Is it on all the other things like, we talk about sports performance and vault stuff, which I think is the best, or 1080s, all these other cool gadgets that we have in training. Every time somebody goes into a new facility, Bob, you've seen this in the past, you have great equipment, boom, blow it up. We're going to get our equipment in here that we like to use. That ain't happening anymore, right? Because it's got to go to different places.
Yeah, there's more dollars. The players are going to be getting some of it. So how do they generate that money? How do they offset it? You think about this. I always try to do simple math. And they fluctuate the ticket prices now. There's obviously clubs and everything. But say for argument's sake, there's 100,000 seats in the stadium at Ohio State. Sell out every game. And there was a time where every game was the same. Now, they varied the ticket prices to try to get people in for some of the lesser games. But on average, I think if I broke it down, let me see what this is. I think it's somewhere around this. But I usually like to use around $80 as what the price is per ticket for every game. So it's like, okay, 80 times 100,000 Schlegs. What do you get right there? Simple math, 8 million. So if you had a 10% fee on that, what are you getting? Another $800,000 a game. You multiply that times 7 or 8, you get another $5 to $6 million a year. Like that can go towards NIL. And so that's where you're trying to figure that out and trying to say like, hey, how much are these tickets? And probably the tickets might actually be more expensive than that. They have licensing fees and everything else. But I understand why they're doing this. That makes sense. What is better, though, is if you can find value adds. Like we talked about that 1922 restaurant and club that's going to be going on. People don't mind paying for stuff as long as they're paying for things of value. And they don't care how hard you're working. They care about results. I had a great thing, Ryan Hawk, I played earlier on my radio show today about like nobody cares how hard you work. They only care about the results. Are you adding value to what they're doing? And so if you're not going to do that, boom, you're done. You're off. You've got to be providing value to people. And so that's what people want to see now is that value add. How can they do it? I don't know if the 10% talent fee is going to feel like a value add unless you're out there in the net. Like Tennessee hadn't been good for a while, Schleg. So there's an element of this for them that might hold a little more water, whereas Ohio State, oh, we made the playoff. Well, good. We expected you to make the playoff. This was what you were supposed to do. So the 10% talent fee on top of tickets, might be a little hard to swallow, although it might be coming. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to be there or not, but it feels like, hey, it could be the case. So we'll ultimately see what happens and where this goes. But Tennessee trying something that nobody else has really tried. They're raising tickets and they're saying it's a little talent fee, the service fee for the player on top of what you're paying. All right. Long for a break. You're going to hit a quick break here. Back on the other side, a lot of big college games happen. We talked to Bender about some of them. We're going to get in the weeds on some of the other games and what it kind of means on the national landscape from what happened this weekend. Next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like... I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer-flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, time to break down some of the big games from this weekend. Of all the games that happened, Ohio State was not playing. Of all the games that happened, what game did you think was the most interesting and had the greatest consequence nationally?
I was just thinking about, I I'm sorry, I got sidetracked because I was just kind of looking through my notes.
Okay.
And we got USC this week, and I was just
No, not next weekend. I'm talking about last.
I know
weekend.
that's why, but like, here's the thing: like, we're in Ohio, we talk about Michigan all the time, and they rush for 300 yards. And it was just my last conversation with Bill that we had on, and they rushed for over 300 yards. And then they obviously made the switch going into this week to go with Orgy. And you start to think about it. You got, Davis Warren, in all intents and purposes, he was 11-14, Bob. His three incompletions were 3 interceptions. They still turned the ball over 3 times. It's just like, man, where are they really going? Now, again, that's not national because they ain't national, right? They regional, right? They just in the Big Ten. They scrapping, okay, to try to be up there. They're not there. So I would say this, LSU got life because the door could have been shut in their face.
Yeah.
If South Carolina not had self-inflicting wounds throughout the entirety of that game, South Carolina owned that game and just allowed LSU to hang around, right, the entire time. And, like, had a pick six that got called back. The foul wasn't even that flagrant, but didn't need to happen. And so the lack of discipline from South Carolina, when you actually have an opportunity where you just beat the dog breaks out of Kentucky, who also held Georgia in check 13-12, and you have LSU coming in at 16th in the country, you have an opportunity to make waves at home game days there, and you don't do it because of a lack of discipline. That probably on a national scale had a lot of impact. But I would say this, big picture, thinking Big Ten, Oregon's game versus Oregon State was the one for me because we actually saw a balanced Oregon team that was able to run the football. Dillon Gabriel was doing what he had been doing all year. I thought going into Oregon State, it was going to be a tough matchup for them considering the Pac-12 and you defected and it's a rivalry game. And Oregon completely shut that down from the jump. So I'd probably say that one.
You jumped around a lot there, Schleg. So trying to follow you. It's like
I'm like a cat. Just
schizophrenic cat that's running around that has just had like maybe a pound of a whole gallon of Monster. So has a lot of juice, maybe not certain where it's going. I think the one little motif, the permeating theme, if you will, from a lot of those games you talked about, maybe Michigan was more turnovers than anything else, but especially in the Oregon-South Carolina game, there were some unnecessary mistakes, but true with Oregon and Oregon State was the ability to either run the ball or stop the run. And that's Georgia, Kentucky too. Like Georgia wasn't able to run the ball as well. You look at that Oregon game, like Dillon Gabriel was doing what he's done. He threw for 291 yards, looks good doing it, but it was really him in the run game. Like he had a 54-yarder. He ripped off a long run, and in doing so, they rushed the ball for 240 yards. They're able to control the clock, control the ground game, and be able to get it done. And Dillon Gabriel was a big part of that. In doing that, they also slowed down the Beavers, who were really efficient running the ball. Like when they had beaten Oregon, I think 2 years ago, pounded the rock on them. To be able to do that, like that was big. And then if you go and you sit there and you look at Georgia and Kentucky, and it's like, okay, what happened in this game? And if you're watching it, you're watching a Georgia team, that rushes the ball 30 times for 102 yards. Like not the most efficient. If you're rushing it 30 times, a lot of times they have 300 yards on the ground. And Kentucky was able to rush it 45 times for 170. So like it was a straight up old school rock fight.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was nothing pretty. But what it tells me is there's nobody that's great this year in college football. Like, I don't think there's any team that you look at like they're just going to steamroll anyone. If you can slow down Georgia's run game and run the football on them like Kentucky did, and it's not like Kentucky's some world beaters. They're good, and they've given Georgia trouble in and intermittently over the years. And in doing that, like there's some issues that they ultimately have. But if you can run the ball, if you can stop the run, push it back on Carson Beck, who we think is good. Listen, he threw for about $160, Schlegs, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Vandegrift, he did what he has been doing all year, which has been not great, but he didn't turn the football over. He threw for 114 yards. But everybody, I think, looked at Georgia as if they were this pinnacle that was so far ahead of everybody else, bringing it back down to earth now. Georgia's a good team, but if you do things to them that can be done, because Kentucky did it, and listen, it was in Lexington. I understand it was a road game for Georgia, so that's going to be tough. But if you can slow down their run game, if you can run the ball, the thing that Kentucky didn't have was the ability to get the big hits over the top. They couldn't separate and do anything that would change the balance fundamentally in that game.
Yeah,
And Georgia
another great game that goes in
down in the quarter, and then that Kentucky wasn't able to answer. They had a 4th and 8, and if you could pick that up, you've got a shot. But unfortunately, they punted and get the ball back.
Another great game, an example of that, Bob, is Missouri, number 6 in the country, and you got
Bill
Boston
O'Brien
College.
Can flat coach. He was 14-0. He had him schemed up. He ran out of bullets in the chamber.
He did,
but he out-coached Drinkwitz. Like, he can say whatever he wants. Missouri has better players than BC, and they had a chance to win that game.
They had a chance to win the game, and they got outrushed. Like BC the week before ran for 300 yards. This week they only had 46. They had 2 turnovers in this game. They lost the time of possession 36-24.
Ooh.
Absolutely crazy. They were 4 of 12 on 3rd down, Bob. But again, and they were still right there at the end of the game. Bill O'Brien has done a phenomenal job. So hats off to him. But guess what? Missouri still won the game. And why do they win it? They control the time of possession. They won the turnover battle, right? They didn't get behind the sticks, right? They converted 3rd downs 11-19. The beautiful thing is this, and it goes back to your point, Bob. Anybody can get beat on any Saturday. And I think we put these teams up there. Like, we got to test this week, Tennessee, Oklahoma. Tennessee on the road in Oklahoma. How are they going to do versus Oklahoma? Oklahoma offensively hasn't been a world beater or anything like that. But you're seeing, if you don't play fundamentally sound football, if you don't control the line of scrimmage, if you turn the ball over, if you don't win 1st or 2nd down to get behind the sticks, you're going to get beat, or you're going to have a chance to get beat by a, supposedly inferior opponent.
Unfair is an interesting word now in college football, because we see these teams move around, transfers, everything else. We're going to get Chris Plank on, who works for Oklahoma, their broadcast team. So excited. We've had him on before. If we can get him on tomorrow, that'd be tremendous to be able to break that down. And he just confirmed Schlegel live breaking news. So we'll have Chris Plank on about 1:05 tomorrow to be able to talk everything about that Oklahoma-Tennessee game and how big of a game that is for both of those teams. It's an opportunity for Oklahoma to obviously set a precedent here in the SEC. Tennessee, with Nico Iamaleava, see what they can do if they can keep pushing and driving the football and having that explosive offense that Heupel has been able to create. All right, we're going to take a little break here. We got some headlines, some big things happening in Buckeye Land. Ryan Day they're talking about Will Howard's qualities. What has set him apart thus far? And we got another game time set for the Buckeyes. Find out next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, we got some great top headlines for you brought to our friends at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, listen, they offer personalized plans to help people feel better. Whether you're struggling with weight loss, low energy, muscle loss, poor sleep, they can help you with all of it. They've helped me. You saw it in the video. I've been a patient there for 7 years. So go check them out. They provide expert guidance for you to safely help reach your health goals. They've got Ohio covered, folks. They're not just for men, they're for women as well. I've had family members go and see them too. In both Cleveland and Columbus. They're out in Indy. Depending on where you're watching, they've got spots in Chicago if you're here visiting. So set up your free consult by going to AffinityWholeHealth.com. That is AffinityWholeHealth.com. All right, Schlegel.
Is that making you laugh, Bob? I was over here just bouncing my chesticles a little bit for you. I was hoping that you could see that while you were reading.
If you can't pop your pecs, what can you do?
I don't know.
It's borderline worthless. You're a borderline worthless individual. So you got to be, like Rock said, dude, you got to be able to pop the pecs. That's probably the only thing I can do. Like that my kids, they see like the Rock do it and they're like, Dad, Rock's way bigger than you. I'm like, yeah, Rock is way bigger than me. He also stopped playing football right after college. And he's been a pro wrestler and he's in great shape. Awesome guy, does a great job. I think he's fantastic. But my body is beaten down and feels like a pile of ground beef most days. And thanks to Affinity, I'm able to still lift and do things. I don't need to be 255 pounds anymore. I'm trying not to be, to tell you the truth. 235, 240. That way, in a case of emergency, I can still go give you a couple series of linebacker Schlegs. Yep. I may not be able to pound for 60 minutes, but I can still get out there and run. But talking about what qualities do you need to be able to play football? What qualities do you need to be able to play quarterback at Ohio State? And Ryan Day talked about this with Will Howard, some qualities he's seen grow in him since he arrived back in January. And he said he's loved seeing Howard get more comfortable as he spent time at Ohio State. He's becoming more confident. He's becoming more comfortable. And he's looking more experienced out there. And you say the guy's played, so he's played 4 years. It's his 5th season. But he's getting more experience, I think, in this offense and what they're asking him to do.
Yes. And I think, too, it goes to his mindset. Listen, when you come into a program, I transferred to Ohio State as well. And you just got to come in and be authentically you. And guess what? That's exactly what Will did. You don't have to just come in and be something that you're not and try to prove anything. Like, literally, the best thing about Ohio State, honestly, in my opinion, through the culture, is just be authentically you, be a worker, right? Like Nick talks about it all the time. I remember him saying this is like, don't just drink the water, carry it. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing with my kids. Guess what? Put your dishes in the freaking dishwasher. we just made you dinner. The last thing you can do is take it, rinse it out, get the little scrubber doomajink, scrub it out, scrub your fork, stick it in the deal, okay? Because I sure in hell don't want to do it. Don't just drink the water, carry it. That's Will Howard. So was he already confident before? The answer is yes. Guys already won a Big 12 title, getting more comfortable, time in the program. Why we talked about, I was kind of anti-freshman coming in early. Then I saw the true like submersion into the culture. Right? We talk about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
But what if you take the horse
you drive their feet into the water?
Yeah,
just go through their nose and in their mouth, and you will be hydrated. Okay, so he's getting more comfortable, and he already has the experience. But it's also the experience with his teammates. And one thing that I've been able to witness, you've been able to witness, Bob, is just the care for the craft. It's just, hey, we're not going and running routes all day. Like, don't confuse activity with achievement, kids. Like, just don't be going running go routes all freaking day. Work the top end, work on catching, work on your drop back. I just remember very visibly, Chip Kelly was like, when they were working on their drop back and not taking a false step in the drop back. And this was like early on OTA type stuff in winter. And you're like, that's a game rep, guys. Like that rep in February or March matters, because you can't just start working on that when we get on the field and we're going to, devote an entire individual period to that BS. No, we're going to work on that because it matters at the very, very beginning. And that's where, because you've done that, you allow your experience to take over. That allows you to be more comfortable. That allows you to be more confident. It's just a cascading effect when you're a player.
And this is a great point, Schlegel. You talk about the game reps, the discipline, and everything that it takes. I saw this little bit on Instagram, and the question was, it talked about all these people that were highly disciplined, that had been successful. We talk about The Rock, like Joe Rogan, these people that have emerged kind of out of the last 5 to 7 years that have become immensely successful. And you look at their discipline with their diet, their health, everything they do is hyper-focused. And the question was, do you think they got successful and then became disciplined, or do you think their discipline helped drive the success? And when Ryan talks about like game rep, everything that you do, and whether, like you said, it's some random drill in January, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing correctly. And I drive this home to my kids all the stinking time. If you're going to do it right. Bend your knees, get your footwork down, whatever it is, make sure your technique's impeccable, because your mind is remembering that. everything you do. So it may seem, oh, like games are so far away. How does this apply? No, this is exactly what we're training you to do. And we're not going to be able to retrain it. We're not going to be able to go out there. So get locked in now. So when you get in a situation where you're tired, where you're fatigued, there's a lot of stuff going on, your body will resort to your training of what you've done and how you've drilled it year over year over year.
Yeah, I think we've seen this, Bob, through Lathan and G and Sonny earlier in the summer, and who else that you had on? Lorenzo.
Cody, Lorenzo. I mean, we've
like all these dudes, right? And I would say
list of dudes. Will Howard, he was on.
Dudes on dudes, right? Dude accountability. But here's the one thing, like Coach Bailey has this in his room, and it's the word fanatical. I talk about being fanatical all the time. And my wife's like, Schleg's like, you're an alum of it. No, like I want to have a high expectation of people because normally they set the bar too low for themselves. Yes. I see greatness within you. And fanatical, this is the definition, filled with excessive and extreme, single-minded focus, obsessively and enthusiastically dedicated to a certain thing, whatever that is. And in this case, in Ohio State, with a veteran-led team, that fanatical, that what we talk about, that single-minded focus is on their craft and on the team because they know as a team you can win. And guess what? By winning, you have fun, right? So, like, again, it's everything that Ryan talks about, but these guys are truly embodying it, which is why it's just fun to hear him talk about Will Howard coming to Ohio State.
It is. Now, with that, we've got some other news. As we mentioned, comments on Will Howard. We've got big noon kick on Fox for Marshall this week, which we'll talk about. But the following week's game, Ohio State will be traveling for their first road game of the year up to East Lansing. That game time has been set. That is going to be a 7:00 game. Schlegel will be streaming on the cock. Yes, that's the peacock. That'll be there for you. So you got to either find a way to get it, go to a bar, head to someone's house, whatever it is. But that game time is going to be at 7:00 here now. So we've got that lined up for you. It's going to be ready to go. It'll be a little bit later. Well, I guess they had Western Michigan was at night too. This will be the first road night game of the year. So get ready for that. All right. Coming next, we've got some tailgate talk. We'll answer your questions and your comments. Diving into this next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby.
All right, Sharks. Got some tailgate talk here. Tailgate talk brought to you by Real Truck, the #1 truck accessory brand in the United States. Top selling upgrades for the ultimate tailgate party. Gear up for this season. Bring your truck to life at realtruck.com. Just like Sharks and I did. We got some great accessories there and some phenomenal things for a truck or even my Jeep, which I absolutely love. Okay. Sharks, you have a lot of energy on the show. And you said the best part of waking up is the Soldiers in your cup.
Yeah.
Provide all this juice. Some people said it's caffeine. Some people want to know if it's something else, if there's something else added into that. We got some Zins. We got some Blackie Milds, maybe something that you're buying in the back of out back in the parking lot. I don't know what's going on, but people have asked in the chat, and I just want to get the answers.
No, man, just spirit juice, guys. Listen, I'm enthusiastic all the time. Spirit juice, man. Holy Spirit juice. Listen, do I take caffeine 100%? But like this, God made me to serve people, love on people, and that's what I do. Matter of fact, Bob, side nugget, if you want to come to the Armory, I'm talking 8 a.m. tomorrow Grand Rounds, I'm talking about basically, I'm talking business, I'm talking sports performance and our model. And actually, I'm talking a little bit about tribes and what does that look like in a business. Super fun, 8 a.m. Armory Buckeyes. But no, I'm like, guys, listen, I am like this 24/7. Just ask my wife of 20 years who's been with me since 1997, May 5th. Why May 5th? Cinco de Mayo. I never forget it. That's where I asked her out. On a bridge, side nugget. Pretty romantic, this guy.
What bridge is that in Texas, in Dallas?
No, it was just a bridge like between two neighborhoods. It was like the community area where there was a pond, and I took her over there and driving in my Camaro with 212 punches in the back with soldiers on it, and Hispanic writing, big silver letters, teal Camaro, 56 spoke roasters, 212 punches, bam, just bumping.
It's pretty remarkable, Schlegel. I appreciate the fact that you can remember all of that and half of the rest of the things that are going on in your life. And then you followed it up with a Valentine's Day wedding in 2004. So Buckeyes, you got everything, all the boxes covered there as you celebrate 20 years this year. So congratulations to that. One other question was coming through about improvement. How can the Buckeyes improve? What would we like to see change? Someone brought up the special teams and, maybe some of the kickoff stuff like that to be a little better in kickoff return. We haven't had a kickoff return, my goodness, since Jordan Hall, I think in 2010 or 2009, and then a punt return since Jalen Marshall in 2014. So it's been a number of years. How do we get that?
Listen, at the end of the day, guys,
touchdowns.
One, you got to have opportunities to get them. A lot of people are kicking them out of the end zone, and I'd rather start from the 25. The other one is we saw Brandon Ennis get 60 yards in the first game. Well, guess what? If you do that, they're not going to try to punt the ball to you. So, again, you still have to be opportunistic, but you got to cheat. Like, the biggest thing that they talk about is that's a game rep. That's a flip in the field rep. So go out there and win, but you got to do it to where you don't put yourself back, get a holding penalty, et cetera, et cetera. But it's something that they're teaching. I mean, there was a block punt I saw in the South Carolina game. Can we flip the field that way? Special teams are very, very important. Let's not kid ourselves. But here's the good nugget. If that's what we're concerned about, then we're hitting on all cylinders on offense and defense. So it doesn't mean don't take a priority, because Lord knows field position matters, but I'm not necessarily worried about it with the way that we're playing right now. But it's something that you can't be lax on.
Well, you can always get better at it. They can always improve. I've seen a lot of improvement in the special teams this year, so I feel pretty good about that. Doesn't mean they still can't get better. All right, we're going to wrap up the show. Schleg's parting thoughts after this.
Building a home for the people who are worth it. Stepping out, throwing in a line, and dropping the tailgate for a picnic. And finding far-off campsites with the people you're closest to. Upgrade your truck, Jeep, or Bronco with over 1 million parts and accessories. And bring your truck to life. Real truck.
All right, final segment of the program, Schlegel, as we kind of get everything rolling here as we wrap up this wonderful Tuesday. We're running downhill Wednesday. I always say it's kind of the second day of the weekend for me because there's no football on, so you get to relax, watch some other stuff. And before diving back in on Thursday night, we've got a great slate of games while Ben Stevens on again Thursday. We got Chris Plank coming on tomorrow. I think we're going to have AJ at the beginning of the show. So another action-packed and loaded show. You're going to want to stay tuned in. The last minute, Schlegel, before we get you out of here, Hawk Boy, what are you thinking about?
No, you know what's funny is I saw this on Ryan's podcast, and it was a great quote, and I'm actually going to share it tomorrow in Grand Rounds, but it's from a guy that we know, Ron Ulrey. People either live up or down to your expectations, and most people set their expectations for themselves too low. So it's on you as a leader to raise those expectations for them, demand more because you know they can do more. And I think that's something that we could all do in business and life with your kids, whatever. Like, there's more that you can do. Set a high expectation for yourself. You are elite. Attack and dominate.
Yeah. People often resist too, Schlegel. We always used to say in college, straight from the winner's manual, paralyze resistance with persistence. Stay after them. Stay strong. Keep tuning in. We'll see you here tomorrow on the Bobby Carpenter Show.